All right, class, welcome to Lesson 3-7. This is an extension to Lesson 3-6, dividing with divisors and quotients with decimals. Words you need to know for this lesson is the dividend. That is the number that you're going to be dividing up. And then the divisor is also a word that you need to know. The divisor is what groups you're going to break them up into. So you're dividing by this number and you're dividing the larger group up into the $20 here. You also need to know a multiplication sign. Obviously you do. The solution is going to be the answer to our problem, but the answer to a division problem, like we said in the previous lesson is a divisor. The question of this lesson is, how can you divide using a decimal divisor? Think about this question during the lesson. Michelle purchases several bottles of water. Before tax is added, the total cost is $3.60. The cost of each bottle is $1.20. How many bottles did she buy? Okay, let's find out. Ask us what information we already know. Well, we know that the total amount that Michelle spends is $3.60. We also know that each bottle that she purchases costs $1.20. Like I said, you know the total cost of the bottle and how much each bottle costs, but what information do you need to find? Well, we need to find the quotient of a division problem because we want to find out how much each bottle, or how many bottles she purchased if each bottle costs $1.20. Now that you have this information, what operation should you choose to solve this problem? We already discussed that, but the answer is division, so you should put a division symbol essentially here to get your quotient to your division problem. Looking at this model, you can use this to help you kind of conceptualize how you would go about dividing $3.60. These are 3 full dollars, and then 60 cents here, 60 groups of 10. Okay. You can go ahead and estimate. We talked about estimation and rounding in the first two lessons, lessons 3-1 and 3-2. But looking at these numbers and what should I round them to, well, we're going to think about that strategic behavior that I talked to you guys about during lessons 3-1 and 3-2. So we want to round to this whole number because that's going to be the easiest to work with. So we're going to circle that, okay? And then we're going to always look to the right and look at that number to determine what we're going to round our whole number to over here. So if it's 5 and above, we're going to round this. Over here, we're going to round it to 4. And looking at this 2 over here, it's lower than 5, so our 1 will stay the same. So 4 divided by 1 is what we'll get, and the answer, or the quotient to this division problem, would be 4. Okay, like I previously said, you can round the 360 to 4 and the $1.20 to 1. When you divide both of these, you would get 4. You know that she probably bought fewer than 4 bottles of water because she actually spent less than the total of $4. Now, after you figure out the estimate, you are now going to look for the exact answer. What the estimate does is it helps us when, after we find the quotient to the exact problem, know if our answer is reasonable or not. If it's close to 4, then it's probably reasonable. If you get something that's way off of 4, then you know it's going to be incorrect. Multiply the divisor and the dividend by the same power of 10. We're going to go back here because I don't want you to be confused. We're going to go ahead and divide the $1.20 or the $3.60 by $1.20 very quickly. That new strategic behavior that I taught you today, we're going to go ahead and place our carets up above each number because this tells us how many numbers we need to have in our quotient so we don't make a mistake there. Now, I'm going to make this really easy for you, and then I'll tell you another way to solve it. But essentially, to divide with decimals in both the quotient and the divisor, you're going to move the decimal over to make the number a whole number in the divisor. So if we look at the $20, we want to move the decimal point over 2 places to the right because this will give us a whole number of 120. Now, here's the thing. How many ever times you move the decimal in the quotient, or sorry, not the quotient, but the divisor, you also must move it the same places in the dividend. So I'm going to move this decimal 2 places to the right, replace my decimal, and then I've got 120, a whole number, divided by 360. Now, we're going to rewrite our carets because now that we have our whole numbers, so we're going to put our carets above here because that tells us how many numbers we need to have in our quotient. We're going to follow the same process with long division that we learned today, and that is we have our carets and we're going to look at the first number. How many groups of 120 can we get out of 3? Well, none. So we're going to put a 0 as our answer, or in our quotient. Okay, and then multiply 0 times 120. Just think about, does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers regularly? 0 times 120 is still 0. Minus 0 from 3, bring that down 3. You're going to bring your 6 down, get 36. Well, I can still get 0 groups of 120 out of 36, and then I'm going to bring down my other 0. So we're essentially still left with 360 divided by 120. That's kind of a big number, but another strategic behavior is that you could come over here on this T-chart and write down 120 up here, and then you're essentially going to write all the multiples of 120. So 120 times 1 is 120. 120 times 2 is 240, and 120 times 3 is 360. Hopefully at this point that number sounds familiar because that is our dividend. And so 120 will go into 360 3 times. So that's what we're going to put here, because 3 times 120 is 360. Subtract the 360, you're left with 0. So 1 and 20 hundredths will go into 3 and 60 hundredths 3 times. That is your answer. That is your quotient to your division problem. All right, so another way is that you can multiply the divisor and the dividend by the same power of 10 and place the decimal in the quotient. So really quick, we're going to look at this method of solving. So it's saying I can multiply them by the same multiple of 10. So if I take my divisor, 120, I can multiply this by 100, which is 2 powers of 10, because if I look at this, 10 times 10 equals 100. So I have 2 powers of 10 equals 100. So my $20 or my 1 and 20 hundredths multiplied by 100 does the same thing. It moves my decimal place 2 places to the right and gives me 120. And the same with $3.60, because whatever I do to my divisor, I have to do to my dividend, multiply it by 100. And it also moves my decimal 2 places to the right, giving me $3.60. All right, your lesson will be uploaded to Edmodo, and it will be in 2 different videos. Like I say at the end of the second video that you'll watch, make sure you go on to Envision and try to see if you can log in and take the quiz for lesson 3-7 so I can get those results. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. All right, like I was previously stating, you could multiply the divisor and the dividend by the same power of 10 and place the decimal in the quotient. That's true, you can do that. But like I modeled earlier, you can just move this decimal over to the right on both sides other than multiplying by the power of 10. Think of the power of 10, that will make the divisor a whole number. what power of 10 would you multiply to make 1 and 20 hundredths a whole number? Well, same process as moving the decimal. It does the same thing. Is you could multiply 1 and 20 hundredths by 100, because 100 is 2 powers of 10, because 10 times 10 equals 100, so it's 2 powers of 10, but it essentially does the same thing, and it just moves my decimal place over 2 places to the right. There we go. And then I replace my decimal point at the end, giving me 120. Okay, so the same thing goes for my dividend. That was my divisor. Now for my dividend, I can multiply it by the same power of 10, 100, 3 and 60 hundredths times 100. Same process. I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the right, replace my decimal at the end, and I get 360. Now I just rewrite it as whole numbers, and we just did this, but my new dividend is 360. My new divisor is 120. And we follow the same process with the carets, and you could still make the t-chart with the different multiples of 120 multiplied by those different factors. Okay. Just like what I just said, when you multiply 1 and 20 hundredths times 100, you'll get 120, and 3 and 60 hundredths times 100 will give you 360, because you're moving the decimal 2 places to the right when you do that, giving you 2 whole numbers to work with instead of decimals. Why do you multiply by powers of 10? Because powers of 10 allow you to just move the decimal to the right. If you multiply by a different power, it wouldn't work out that way to where the decimal would just move over easily. Same thing to make the dividend and divisor a whole number, but yeah. Now you can divide the quotient. We just did that. Okay. 3 is close to a reasonable answer because it is close to 4, our original estimate. You now know how to divide using a decimal as a divisor. Go ahead and try to log in after you view this video to Pearson SuccessNet and take that quiz on 3-7 so I can see those results and see how you did. Thanks. Bye.